Ethan sat alone on the quiet hill outside the research station. The desert winds brushed against him, warm and dry, carrying the faint scent of alien flowers that only bloomed at dusk. He was supposed to feel excited. After all, not many humans got to live among another species, learn their ways and share knowledge, but his heart felt heavy. He kept thinking of Lyra. She had left 2 months ago with her people, returning to the capital city far across the desert. Since then, the station had felt empty. Ethan told himself he should focus on reports, on data, on what his team expected. Yet every night when the stars lit up the dark sky, he thought of her. He remembered the way she had listened with patience, the way her voice carried calmness, and the way she had smiled when she learned about human laughter. But he also remembered his mistake, the moment everything changed. It had been unplanned. He hadn't meant for her to hear that thought. Humans thought things all the time, silly and small, sometimes even unkind. But her people could sense emotions and faint thoughts, the kind most humans never shared aloud. And when she turned her head that day, surprised and curious, he realized she had caught something he never wanted to reveal. He had admired her too much. Her people believed that such thoughts were not accidents. They believed they were proposals, deep declarations of intent to bond. For them, to think such a thing was to open one's heart. At first, Ethan had panicked. He tried to explain that humans were different, that stray thoughts meant nothing. But the look on her face stopped him. She had not been angry. She had not laughed. She had simply looked at him with an expression he couldn't forget, an expression that was part wonder, part tenderness. And then she left. Now Ethan sat on the hill, wondering if he had ruined everything. He missed her more than he expected. It was not only about attraction, it was about the way she had made him feel seen. Out here, so far from Earth, surrounded by silence and stars, Ethan often felt like a stranger in the universe. But with Lyra, he had felt human in the best way. Still, she was gone, and he didn't know how to reach her. The desert stretched endlessly, and her city was far beyond his ability to travel. Communication between humans and her people was still formal, carried out through official channels, slow and careful. He couldn't just write a message that said, "I miss you." The words felt too simple for something so big. Every night he replayed their last conversation in his mind. "You do not need to explain," she had said softly, her hands folded in the way her people showed calm. "We heard your thought. We understand what it means, but it doesn't mean—" Ethan had tried. She had tilted her head, studying him. "Maybe it means more than you think." Those words echoed inside him still. Maybe it meant more. Maybe what humans called mistakes were sometimes beginnings. The thought gave him hope, small but steady. Humanity had always been clumsy in the universe. They stumbled, they guessed, they miscommunicated. Yet somehow that clumsiness often led to discovery. A wrong turn became a new path. A misunderstanding became the first spark of friendship. Perhaps his mistake with Lyra could be that spark too. Ethan stood and looked at the horizon. The stars were bright above, scattered like lanterns. Somewhere out there she was looking at the same sky. Maybe she wondered about him. Maybe she smiled when she thought of his awkward words, his clumsy humor, his human way of making mistakes. He breathed deeply, filling his lungs with desert air. For the first time in weeks, he felt a little lighter. He didn't know how to bridge the distance, not yet. But he knew he wanted to try. Humanity's gift was not perfection. It was persistence. It was hope. It was the ability to reach out again and again, even across silence. Ethan whispered into the night, as if the stars could carry his voice. "Lyra, if you can hear me, I didn't mean to propose, but maybe I do mean it now." He smiled at his own foolishness. But for the first time, the thought didn't feel heavy. It felt true. He turned back toward the station, ready to keep working, ready to keep waiting, ready to keep hoping, because deep down, he knew their story wasn't finished. And so it began, with a single mistake. "She heard what I thought about her butt." and her species took it as a mating proposal. Ethan woke the next morning with sand still on his boots and a strange calm in his chest. The desert sunrise painted the horizon with gold and pale blue, and for a brief moment, he felt less alone. He remembered what he had whispered to the stars the night before, and though he doubted Lyra had heard it, the act itself made him feel closer to her. But when he walked back into the station, reality returned. The other humans were busy with their reports, screens glowing with endless data. No one spoke of feelings. No one asked about Lyra. To them, she was just another contact in the cultural exchange program. To Ethan, she was more than that. Too much more. As the days passed, the silence grew heavier. He checked the official channels every morning, hoping for a message, but nothing came. Communication with her city remained formal. Shipments, requests, research updates. No words from her. No signs that she even remembered what had happened. At night, when the station grew quiet, Ethan sat at his desk and stared at blank pages. He wanted to write something, anything that could reach her, but each time his hand froze. What could he say? I miss you. I didn't mean it, but maybe I did. Human words felt clumsy, weak, unfit for what he carried inside. He thought of her, expression again, the way she had said, maybe it means more than you think. Those words lived in his mind like a light he couldn't put out, yet he still didn't know how to move forward. The distance between them felt larger than the desert. It felt like a canyon of silence, and he had no bridge. One evening, while he sat outside again, watching the sky darken, his teammate Clara joined him. She was one of the few who noticed his moods. She sat on the rock beside him and crossed her arms. You've been quiet, she said. Ethan shrugged. Just thinking. About her, Clara guessed. He didn't answer, but she was right. Clara smiled faintly. You know, you humans. She paused, correcting herself. We humans, we always think too much before we speak. Her people don't. They live by honesty. Maybe that's why she looked at you the way she did. You gave her something real, even if you didn't mean to. Ethan sighed. But what if I ruined it? What if she thinks I promised something I can't give? Or what if you promised something you can give? Clara said gently. You just don't see it yet. Her words settled deep inside him. Maybe Clara was right. Maybe what he thought of as a mistake was actually the truest part of himself. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stared at the stars through the window of his quarters. Somewhere out there, Lyra was under the same sky. And if her people truly valued honesty, then maybe the best way to reconnect wasn't to hide, but to tell the truth, plain and simple. He picked up his tablet and began to write. Not an official report, not a formal request, just words. He wrote about how lonely the desert felt without her laughter, how the station seemed quieter, duller since she left, how he admired the way her people valued truth, even when it was awkward. He admitted his mistake, that his thought had not been meant as a proposal. But then he wrote the hardest part, that maybe now, after all this time, he wished it had been. He stopped, his hand shaking. The words looked too raw, too exposed. If the message reached her, it could change everything. If it didn't, it could make him look foolish not only to her but to his own people. Still, humanity's strength was not in hiding. It was in trying, in daring to reach across silence. He saved the message but didn't send it. Not yet. His heart wasn't ready. The next day, he walked through the station halls, his steps heavy. He wondered if he would ever be brave enough to send those words. But as he passed the communication room, he heard Clara's voice. She was speaking to the operators, discussing the next transmission to the alien city. A thought struck him. What if his message could ride along with the official one, hidden at the end, not as part of the data, but as a simple note? It would break no rules. It would simply be human. For hours, Ethan debated with himself. Fear told him to stay silent. Hope told him to act. By nightfall, he knew he couldn't live with silence any longer. He returned to his desk, opened the message and read it one last time. Then with a deep breath, he pressed send. The moment felt unreal, like stepping off a cliff and trusting the air to catch him. Days passed with no reply. Ethan grew restless, pacing the halls, working without focus. At night, he returned to the hill, looking at the stars, whispering her name. Then one evening, the station received an unexpected packet from the city. It wasn't an official report. It wasn't formal data. It was short, personal, and marked. With a symbol he recognized, it was from Lyra. His hands shook as he opened it. Her words appeared on the screen, gentle and clear. Ethan, I heard your message. You say it was a mistake, but to me it was not. We do not fear thoughts. We do not fear honesty. You wonder if distance means the end. I believe it means the beginning. You are human, and that is why I choose to listen. Do not be afraid of your own truth. Ethan stared at the words, his chest tightening, his eyes burning. For the first time since she left, he felt the distance shrink. Not gone, but smaller. Hope filled him. Not certainty, not answers, but hope. Humanity's gift. That night he whispered to the stars again. Thank you. And deep in his heart he knew their story was still unfolding. Ethan read Lyra's message again and again. Every word seemed to glow brighter each time his eyes traced the lines. Do not be afraid of your own truth. It was such a simple sentence, but it felt like a lifeline. For days he had carried the weight of silence. Now her words gave him breath again. She had heard him. She had answered. She remembered. But even with the joy of her reply, the distance remained. She was still far away across the desert in her people's capital. Her life went on without him, and his days still stretched in quiet routine. Reports, studies, meals, sleep, repeat. The ache of separation didn't disappear just because of one message. If anything, it grew sharper. He wanted more. He wanted to talk to her, not just in letters, but face to face. He wanted to hear her voice again, the soft way it carried meaning, yet he didn't know how to reach her. Official channels were slow and formal. A message like hers had been unusual, almost a bending of their strict ways. Could he really expect another one soon? What if her people told her not to write again? What if this was the only reply he would ever get? The thought made his chest tighten. One evening, Ethan sat outside the station with Clara again. The desert sky blazed with stars more than he had ever seen back on Earth. He told her about Lyra's reply. Clara listened quietly, her eyes warm. So now you know she cares, Clara said. Yes, Ethan admitted, but I still feel far away. I don't know what to do next. Clara tilted her head, thinking. Maybe it's not about what you do next, maybe it's about being next. You human, and we're always in a rush. Her people are patient. Maybe what she wants is for you to hold on, not give up. That's the human strength, isn't it? We keep reaching, even when the distance seems endless. Ethan considered her words. Humanity's strength was persistence. Not speed, not perfection, but the will to keep trying. Maybe that was what Lyra had meant when she said she chose to listen, because humans were different in that way. Still, the silence weighed heavy. He decided to write again, though his words came slowly. He told her about the desert sunsets, about the way the sand turned red when the light struck it. He told her about Clara's advice, about how humans struggled with patience but tried anyway. And finally, he told her that he still missed her presence even when he was surrounded by others. When he finished, he hesitated again. Would it be too much? Too human? He didn't know. But once more, he pressed send. This time, the reply came quicker. A day later, the station received another small packet. It was from Lyra. Ethan, your words are strange, but I keep them. You speak of sunsets as if they have a spirit. We do not describe the world this way. Yet I find I like it. When I walk through the city, I try to see as you do. It makes me Feel closer. You say you miss me. I too wonder about you. I wonder why humans can feel so much even when it hurts. Perhaps this is your strength. Ethan smiled at the screen until his face ached. She had answered again. She had thought of him. Day by day, their messages continued. They were never long, never official, just small pieces of thought, carried through the channels, hidden in the spaces between reports. Ethan told her about the silly things his team did, about how Clara sang old Earth songs while she worked, about how he burned his hand once trying to cook bread in the station oven. Lyra, in return, told him about her city. She described the tall white towers shaped like petals, the wide market squares filled with scents of fruit and spice, the way her people gathered in circles to share stories through song. Through each exchange, the distance shrank. Ethan could almost hear her laugh when she described her clumsy attempt to copy a human smile. He could almost see her walking through the busy streets as she described them. Yet still, the ache remained. Messages were not the same as presence. He longed to see her again, to stand beside her, to let his words be carried by voice, not screen. One night, he sat on the hill, the stars above him sharp and endless. He whispered, "I wish I could be where you are." As if in answer, the station received news the next morning. There would be a new exchange event, a gathering between human envoys and her people in the capital city. For the first time since she left, Ethan had a chance to see her again. But there was a problem. Only a few humans would be chosen to go. The leaders wanted representatives who were calm, careful, professional. Ethan was none of those things. His heart was messy, his words clumsy. He feared he wouldn't be picked. Still, hope sparked inside him, humanity's gift. He decided he would try. When the selection came, he put his name forward. Others doubted him, even Clara. "You're too personal with her," she warned. "The leaders want distance. They don't want to risk mistakes." But Ethan remembered what Lyra had told him. Do not be afraid of your own truth. If honesty was what connected them, then honesty would guide him still. He stood before the council and told them the truth. He admitted that he had grown close to Lyra, that his bond was personal, not professional. He told them that this, too, was part of the exchange, because real peace between species was not made only through trade or reports, but through hearts willing to connect. The council was silent. Then, to his shock, they agreed. "You may go," they said. Ethan felt his chest burn with relief. For the first time, the distance between him and Lyra seemed crossable. That night, he wrote her another message. "Lyra, I will come. Soon. The desert will not keep us apart. I don't know what I will say when I see you, but I know I want to try. Humans are not perfect, but we do not give up. That is our truth." He sent it, his heart racing. He didn't know how she would respond, but he knew he was finally on the path back to her. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if reminding him that even in vast silence, humans always reached for connection. And Ethan, clumsy and hopeful, was reaching still. The desert stretched wide before Ethan as the transport began its long journey toward the alien capital. The sun was fierce, the sands endless, yet his heart beat louder than the engine's hum. For weeks he had only dreamed of seeing Lyra again, and now the chance was real. Still, fear walked beside him. What if she had changed her mind? What if her people had told her to forget him? What if, when he stood in front of her, she no longer looked at him with the same gentle curiosity as before? Ethan closed his eyes and took a breath. Humanity had always faced the unknown with trembling hands and stubborn hearts. This was no different. The journey took days. The transport crossed dunes that seemed to have no end, stopped at outposts, where supplies were exchanged, and past silent cliffs where wind whistled like voices. At night, Ethan lay awake under the stars, his thoughts restless. He remembered their messages, her words about seeing the world through his eyes, her confession that she wondered about him. These memories kept him going when the distance felt too heavy. At last, the towers of the alien city rose on the horizon. They shimmered white and silver, shaped like petals reaching toward the sky. Ethan leaned forward in his seat, his breath catching. He had imagined this place through her words, but seeing it with his own eyes filled him with awe. The city gates opened, and the transport rolled into the heart of the capital. The streets were alive with movement. Alien citizens in flowing robes, their voices low and melodic. Markets filled with colors and scents that overwhelmed his senses. He wanted to stop and watch everything, but his purpose burned stronger. He was here to see her. The human delegation was welcomed into a tall hall, cool and bright inside. Officials from both sides greeted one another with formal words, but Ethan barely heard them. His eyes scanned the crowd, searching for one face, and then she was there. Lyra stood near the far wall, her posture calm, her eyes steady. When she noticed him, something flickered across her face. Something soft, something familiar. Ethan's chest tightened, but protocol held him back. The officials began their long speeches about unity and exchange, trade agreements and cultural understanding. Ethan stood among his people, nodding when required, but his thoughts never left her. She was only a few steps away, yet she felt as distant as the stars. Finally, the speeches ended. The gathering shifted into smaller circles of conversation. Ethan's chance came. He walked toward her, his steps unsure, his heart loud in his ears. "Lyra," he said softly when he reached her. Her eyes met his. "Ethan." The single word carried more than 1,000 could. For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled with all the unsent messages, the missed days, the distance. "I wasn't sure you would answer my letters," Ethan admitted. "I wasn't sure you would keep sending them," she replied. Her voice was calm, but her eyes held warmth. "I didn't know how else to stay close," he said. She tilted her head, studying him in the way only she could. "And yet, across distance, you found a way." Ethan felt a smile tug at his lips, though his throat was tight. "I kept hoping you'd hear me, that you'd still choose to listen." "I did," she said simply. The sadness of the months apart still lingered between them, but now it was mixed with something new. Possibility. They moved to a quieter corner of the hall. Ethan told her about the desert, the sunsets, Clara's advice, and how sending those messages had been his way of holding on. Lyra told him about her city, how she had looked at the towers differently after his descriptions of Earth, how she had begun to see beauty in ways her people rarely noticed. "Your people," she said, "see meaning in everything, even in mistakes. That is why your words stay with me." Ethan swallowed hard. "Sometimes I think that's all I am, mistakes." "Then perhaps mistakes are what build bridges," she answered. Her words struck deep. Humanity's history was filled with mistakes that had led to discovery, stumbling into new lands, failing and trying again, missteps that became miracles. Perhaps this moment was another. Yet even with her words, Ethan felt the weight of distance. They were together now, but what of tomorrow? He would return to the station. She would remain in the city. Their lives would split again. "I don't want to lose this," he said quietly. Lyra looked at him for a long time before answering. "Then do not. Hold on as humans do. Keep reaching, even when it hurts. That is your strength." He nodded, though his chest ached. The evening wore on. The gathering ended. The human delegation prepared to leave the hall. Ethan stood at the doorway, turning once more to look at her. She stood in the glow of the alien lights, her gaze steady, her presence calm. He raised a hand in farewell. To his surprise, she mirrored the gesture. It was small, simple, but to him it was everything. As the delegation left the city that night, Ethan's sadness did not disappear. The distance would return, the longing would remain. But woven into that sadness was something stronger. Hope. He had seen her again. He had spoken to her, and she had reminded him that mistakes could be beginnings, that bridges could be built even from clumsy human words. Back on the transport, as the desert stretched before them once more, Ethan whispered to himself, "We'll find a way. We always do." The stars above shimmered like quiet witnesses, as if agreeing that humanity's gift was not certainty but persistence. And Ethan, with his flawed but honest heart, carried that gift forward, still reaching, still hoping. The journey back across the desert felt longer than the one that had taken Ethan to the city. He sat by the small window of the transport, staring out at the endless dunes. The stars glowed above, bright and sharp, but tonight they felt far away. He had seen her. He had spoken to her. For a brief moment the distance had vanished, but now that moment was gone and the ache of separation returned even heavier. He thought of the way she had raised her hand at the doorway, mirroring his farewell. A simple gesture, but it carried weight. It meant she had chosen to acknowledge him, to connect with him even in front of her people. Still, the question burned in him. How long could they keep living this way? Letters through official channels, short visits separated by months, words instead of presence. Back at the station, Ethan tried to bury himself in work. He wrote reports, fixed equipment, joined his team for meals. But inside, he felt hollow. Each task felt smaller than the longing that filled him. At night, he returned to the hill outside the station, staring at the stars, whispering her name. One evening, Clara found him there again. She sat beside him without speaking at first. The wind carried the cool scent of desert flowers, faint but calming. "You saw her?" Clara finally said. "Yes," Ethan replied softly. "And now you miss her more." He nodded. "I thought seeing her would make it easier. But it didn't. It just showed me how far apart we still are." Clara leaned back on her elbows, gazing at the stars. "You know, that's the strange thing about humans. We don't stop at missing someone. We start building ways to close the distance. Letters, ships, even bridges across galaxies. Maybe that's what you have to do." Ethan turned his head toward her. "Build a bridge?" "Not stone and metal," Clara said. "A human kind of bridge. Something that tells her no matter how far she goes, you'll find a way to reach her." Her words stayed with him long after she went back inside. That night, Ethan wrote another letter to Lyra. He didn't hide his sadness. He told her how the silence pressed on him, how each day without her voice felt like a weight. But he also told her that humans never gave up, even when the road seemed impossible. "Maybe we cannot erase the distance," he wrote, "but maybe we can build across it, even if it takes time, even if it takes many mistakes. Humans are stubborn like that." When her reply came days later, Ethan read it with trembling hands. "Ethan, I hear your sadness. I feel it. My people do not carry longing the way you do. When distance comes, we accept it. But you humans resist it. You try to hold on. At first I thought this was weakness. Now I wonder if it is strength. Perhaps it is why I keep listening." Her words brought both comfort and pain. She admitted she did not feel longing as he did, but she also admitted she chose to listen because of it. That was something. That was hope. Still, the problem remained. They were trapped in cycles of separation and brief connection, and Ethan knew he couldn't keep living in the silence between. Weeks passed. Work at the station grew heavy, and tensions between the two species rose. Small misunderstandings caused delays, and leaders on both sides grew impatient. Ethan saw, in their eyes, the same doubt he had once carried. Was connection even possible between such different ways of life? One night during a heated meeting, a human official spoke sharply. "We will never fully understand them. Their ways are too different from ours." The words struck Ethan like a spark. He remembered Lyra's gentle voice, her calm eyes, her simple truth. Maybe mistakes build bridges. He stood and spoke before he could stop himself. "Understanding doesn't mean being the same," he said. "It means reaching across difference, even when it's hard, even when it feels impossible. That's what humans do. We make mistakes, we stumble, but we don't stop trying. That's how we build connection." The room fell silent. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Clara smiled faintly, and a few others nodded. The officials didn't answer, but Ethan could tell his words had planted something. Later, alone on the hill, Ethan thought about what he had said. Maybe that was the answer, not just for politics, but for him and Lyra too. He couldn't erase the distance. He couldn't change her people's way of life. But he could keep reaching. He could keep building a bridge, even if it was only made of words, letters, and small gestures. That thought gave him strength. He began sending Lyra not just letters, but small pieces of himself. Drawings of the desert sunsets, descriptions of Earth's oceans which she had never seen. Even a recording of Clara singing an old Earth song, which he thought Lyra might enjoy. To his surprise, she responded in kind. She sent him sketches of her city, simple but elegant. She described the scent of the spice markets, the feeling of cool stone under her feet, the sound of her people's songs echoing in the towers. She even sent him a recording, her own voice, low and melodic, singing a short line of one of her people's songs. When Ethan played it back, his chest ached. Hearing her voice again was like water in the desert. It didn't erase the distance, but it made it bearable. One evening, after listening to her recording for the 10th time, Ethan whispered to himself, "This is our bridge." And he realized that maybe Clara was right. Humans built bridges not just with stone, but with persistence, with hope, with the simple act of not letting go. The sadness was still there. He still longed to stand beside her. But now, woven into the sadness, was something stronger. Connection. A fragile, human-made bridge stretching across the silence. And Ethan knew he would keep building it, piece by piece, until the day the distance no longer held them apart. The days at the desert station grew slower for Ethan. He still worked, still laughed sometimes with Clara, still walked the hill at night to stare at the stars. But always, beneath those daily actions, he carried the same ache. Lyra's last message still played in his head, her voice, soft and melodic, singing a line of her people's song. Every time he listened to it, his chest felt tight. It was beautiful. But it was also painful because he wanted more. He wanted her presence, not just her voice. He kept sending her messages, letters, sketches, descriptions of Earth. He wanted her to see his world through his eyes. He wanted her to know how deeply he cared. For a while her replies came often, steady like the rhythm of waves. But then suddenly, they stopped. 1 week passed, then 2, then 3. Ethan checked the comm station every morning, waiting for her name to appear in the incoming files. Nothing. He asked the tech team to double-check the system, worried that a signal was being lost. The system was fine. The silence was real. That silence pressed harder than before. At night, he walked the hill and whispered to the stars, "Did I say too much? Did I frighten her away?" Clara noticed his heaviness. One evening, she brought 2 cups of tea and sat with him. "Still no message?" she asked. He shook his head. "It feels like the bridge we built is crumbling." "Maybe it isn't," Clara said gently. "Maybe it's just waiting. You humans, you want answers, quickly. But sometimes bridges need time, even ones made of words." Ethan wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at him. One night in his rest cabin, Ethan sat with his datapad and tried to write another letter to Lyra. He wrote, deleted, wrote again. Finally, he paused and whispered, "What can I even say when she's silent?" And then he realized, maybe the answer wasn't in the words he wanted to send, but in showing her what humans did when faced with silence. They kept trying, so he wrote simply, "Lyra, I don't know why your replies have stopped. Maybe you are busy. Maybe your people do not want you to write. Maybe you have grown tired of me. But I want you to know I am still here. Humans are stubborn. We hold on even when things are quiet. I will keep reaching even if it feels like I'm reaching into emptiness. Because to me, you are worth it." He sent the message and waited. Days turned into weeks. Still nothing. The silence became almost unbearable. Ethan started doubting not only her feelings but his own. Was he foolish for holding on? Was this just a dream he had built too high? A bridge too fragile to last? But then, one night under the desert stars, something shifted inside him. He looked at the wide sky, endless and dark, and remembered all the stories of humanity's past. Explorers, crossing oceans, astronauts stepping onto new worlds, families writing letters across continents. They had all faced distance, they had all faced silence, and still they kept moving, kept reaching, kept hoping. That's what it means to be human, he whispered to himself. We don't give up, even when the silence grows loud. The next day he decided to send something different, not just a letter, not just words. He asked Clara for help. Together they gathered a small package of items, a cloth dyed in the desert's colors, a vial of sand from the hill where he always sat, and a recording of Ethan himself telling her about his favorite human story, a tale of a traveler who crossed endless seas just to see the one he loved again. It was not grand. It was simple, but it was human. He sent the package through official channels, not knowing if it would reach her, not knowing if she would even accept it. And then, once again, he waited. This time the reply came. It was not immediate. It arrived, after nearly a month. Ethan almost didn't believe it when the comms officer handed him the file. His hands shook as he opened it. The message was short. Ethan, I was silent because my people questioned our connection. They do not understand your persistence. They asked me to stop listening. But when your package came, I saw the sand. I heard your story. And I understood. You are different from us. You hold on when we let go. At first I thought this was weakness. Now I think it may be your strength. I do not know what will happen, but I cannot ignore you. Ethan read the message again and again, his eyes stinging. She had not left him. She had been pulled away by duty, by her people's doubt. But she chose to return. Clara found him later that evening, sitting on the hill with tears in his eyes. She sat beside him quietly until he managed to speak. She wrote back. He whispered. Clara smiled softly. I told you, bridges take time. Ethan nodded. The sadness was still there. The distance had not vanished, but now it was mixed with something else. Hope. A stubborn, human hope that no silence could erase. He looked up at the stars, his heart steady. The bridge between him and Lyra was fragile, yes, but it was real. And he would keep building it, stone by stone, word by word, no matter how far apart they were, because that was what humans did. They reached across the impossible.